We're back um, for another installment of my short story I've been working on called It's Been 100 Days. If you're new to the channel, then I did episode 1. This is episode 2. I did episode 1 a couple days ago. I'll put a link to episode 1 in the description for this episode. I think there's probably going to be 4. We'll see. So let me find. There it is. Last time we read up to day 15. Also, we read day 0 and the prologue. So now we're on day 16. Day 16, stirrings of something new. It rained. Our teenage house sitters, I will now call them scouts, were out before dawn. They were out half a day before they return. We begun to organize ourselves, and besides the scouts, have 4 large-scale projects going at once. A group of men and women have taken on the task of starting our gardens, and they are wrapping their heads around this complex task. Some of our backyards are already well suited for food production. Others will need extensive modification, including demolition. There is always some pushback concerning the latter, but it's surprising and encouraging how quickly people get behind the project. Over time, this will become second nature. There is another team, mostly men, devoted to the heavy work of clearing our lots of all the ornamental trash plants and leveling the ground. They are also building some really sturdy-looking elevated walks using fence boards, so it's easier to get around in the shared gardening area. My old pickup truck happens to be a dump truck. I did the dump conversion myself a few years back. We use it to haul the heavy waste material down to the intersection and dump it there. This won't hold back anyone who's serious about getting through, but it's a start. A third team is currently tearing down the destroyed homes for their materials. I'm working with this bunch. We store salvage in garages to keep the rain off, and the cars end up on the sidewalk. That's not going to last, of course, as thieves will just jack them or set fire to them out of spite. There was some talk about using our cars to block the street, as recommended, but nobody wanted to go first. We're still clinging to the past. That's okay, one step at a time. The fourth team is focused on hardening off the perimeter. This isn't complicated work, but requires a good deal of materials and some engineering. Toward evening, there was something like a gun battle nearby, but I couldn't tell where. Up and down the street, we all came out to listen. It was the most unnerved I've ever seen. All of us standing silent, holding each other and watching the sky watchfully, as if the invasion force were surely parachuting in on us. I can even imagine that the Chinese had made landfall with an amphibious division, so intense was the battle. It lasted for part of an hour, then suddenly it was over. A bunch of us got together and with little discussion decided to use our cars to block the intersections. Using a nail as a punch, we punctured the tanks and drained out the gasoline for later use. My pickup was set aside from this as it's a working truck. There was another potluck, except for the small children who just wanted to play themselves to exhaustion. The rest of us were deep in our private thoughts. Day 17. Too many loose ends. Cloudy and windy. It looks like a storm is inbound. The teenagers made another surveillance run to find out what can be known regarding the gunfight. After half a day of snooping around, there's no sign of where the battle had taken place. The police scanner didn't have any information either. They'll have another look later. Gardening and demolition proceed by day, followed by a modest meal from our stores, and then a community meeting. Nearly all the homes on our block are now part of the work. There are only 2 serious holdouts. They think we're crazy communists or something. The food supply isn't looking too good. There was a lot of talk about that. Some mothers have become concerned about their children not having any schooling, and a small group came together after dinner and discussed setting up a multi-age school. There was no shortage of potential teachers. They didn't come to an agreement, but it seemed they would. During the meal, the wind blew really hard. Day 18, food and panic. Glory be, there's food. Word got around that the city was about to do a food distribution at specified locations. Everyone got excited. We will need the food, but I didn't like the sound of it at all. I suggested the first attempt at a food distribution would probably turn into a complete disaster. It might become violent, and we should stand back and see what happens. If it looks like the government knows what they are doing and can manage crowds, then we can relax. There were other voices, mostly amounting to how we are taxpayers and the government owes us. The community voted not to send anyone, except perhaps to observe. If things didn't blow up completely, then we would attend the next distribution. 3 of the scouts went. They managed to secure, excuse me, they managed to secure a small sack of rice from the back of a van. But shortly after this, there were shots fired, and the event turned into a terrified stampede. Our team found a safe observation point, and from there noticed that some armed individuals hijacked several of the trucks used to distribute food, and almost nobody else came away with anything. In the aftermath, there were significant injuries, some possibly from the shots fired, but mostly from people being trampled to death in the panic. The stolen trucks ran over other hopefuls who got in their way. The young people seemed to think it was an exciting adventure. Mostly, I think they felt useful. We're all very proud of them, and they got some food, so that's good. The outcome and loss of life was precisely what I thought it would be. The county needs to get their shit wired up tight if they intend to do that again. But if they do, we'll be there. The weather is turning bad. I have a weather radio, and I scanned the channels for any broadcasts. There were coastal warnings about high surf and securing anything that could be blown away. I sent the word around, and the phone tree did the rest. I don't know how ready we are for a big storm, but it's coming, so I guess we're about to find out. We need a better way to communicate. The Mora family heard from the missing son-in-law, but I got that news late at night, so didn't have an opportunity to discuss the details. I hope he's okay. I'm a little worried that, given the overall collapse we're seeing, he might not be able to get home easily, or at all. I haven't said anything about this to anyone, nor would I. Day 19. The storm. A big storm has hit. It's our third of the year, no doubt signs of a climactic shift taking place. The oceans are really hot this year, means more and more powerful storms. This one has horizontal rain like I've never seen in these parts. Rain pounding its way around windows, under doors, threatening to tear the roofing off. Our roof is fairly new, but the entire house shakes. The Mora family are fine on the patio. The tiny house Mr. Mora and I built is holding up great. As long as the patio roof doesn't lift, they're in good shape. The electrical power to the neighborhood fails about an hour in. We're okay because of the solar and batteries, but I advise the Moras to conserve power until we can assess the situation tomorrow. They had no idea we were using off-grid solar, and that's the entire point. Nothing else to report. Tomorrow will tell. Day 20. The mess. The storm lasts until the small hours of the morning. I don't know about anyone else, but I didn't sleep a wink. At 3 a.m., I had to look outside. What a mess. The road in front is completely covered in fallen branches and thick piles of leaves, so it looks like some kind of gaudy green shag carpet from the 1970s. Loose debris has blown in from who knows where. It's also heavily flooded. No doubt the drains are completely fouled. Before I go to lay down and try to get some sleep, I check my weather station. From the readings, I can tell the mast has been blown over, likely destroyed. But before it failed, it had registered just over 3 inches of rain and a maximum wind gust of 87 miles per hour. That's a hurricane by most measures. Whatever it was that hit us, it came completely unannounced. Dawn is gray and wet, with gusting winds and a kind of stinging wind-blown spray coming off everything. Our off-grid power is holding up well. I inspect the panels from the ground, expecting to find that some have been torn loose. Happily, everything appears to have survived. Most of the arrays are covered over in small branches and leaves. I'll have to clean that up. The backyard is mildly flooded, and water did manage to seep into the Mora tiny house built on the patio slab. They put out some towels to soak it up and have no complaints. Like me, they didn't sleep much. Overall, we're looking good. I met some neighbors in the street. All around is the sound of chainsaws already going to work. What a mess. Talk is that a dozen large trees have been lost nearby, and the roads are blocked all around by uprooted trees, fallen branches, and downed power lines. The landline phones are down. I checked my cell phone, and there is no service. Nobody had a clue what was coming. It was at least a tropical storm. I tell them what my weather station reported just before it died, and there is general agreement that the winds were at least that bad. We lost some housing. One place had its roof partially blown off, leaving just the bare rafters on one side. Another house took a glancing strike from falling redwood. Nobody was injured in either case, and the affected neighbors have already found lodgings in accordance with our earlier agreements. We have some scavenged building materials from the earlier demolitions. Maybe it will be enough for the repairs. Seems like we came out of it okay. I can't imagine that will be the same story everywhere else in the city. At the very least, ours might be the only household with electric power. Day 21, the cleanup. The scouts head out to see what happened to the other communities. A dozen of our men, in 2 teams, descend on the damaged properties. It takes a couple of hours just to organize ourselves around what needs to be done. Luckily, they located what looks to be most of the missing roof 2 houses down in the middle of the street. It should be an easy salvage. Still, a lot of work, and the skies haven't yet cleared. There are downed power lines all over the place. It's not only dangerous as hell, it also means we won't have electricity for power tools to do the needed repairs. Nobody complains. It seems we all understand that score now. However, it is unlikely anybody is coming to fix the power or the phones, at least not for a while. I overheard some people opining that with damage this extensive, the utility crews will have to prioritize on things like hospitals and emergency services. They would get to residential areas in a few days, so we would have to hold out until then. I didn't bother telling them. There are no utility crews anymore. They'll figure it out on their own. I do, however, reveal that I have off-grid solar panels and a big bank of lithium batteries, and everything appears fully operational. This sparks a good deal of interest. After fielding a flurry of questions, I jump to the point. I have a decent cache of rechargeable power tools I can loan, and we can organize a battery charging station at my house for all our cordless tools. I also have 4 units of cordless site lighting that can be used for inside repairs on the wrecked properties. We spend another hour setting all this up. People are shocked at how much resource I have for this exact situation. They are surprised only because they don't know me very well. Those that do know me aren't surprised at all. With all the tool chargers plugged in, the draw on the battery bank is not that great, but I send some teenagers up on the roofs to unfoul the solar panels anyway. Just as they finish, a ray of sunlight stabs down from the sky, striking the 60-inch panels so they reflect blue. I can almost sense the fresh power surging in the wires, and it feels great. It's the best $70,000 I ever spent. We finally get to work on the damaged houses. It's going to take at least 3 days, hoping there isn't any more rain. The neighborhood wives discover the power source too. Some of their husbands approach me about setting up a communal kitchen at my house. That sounds great, I say, and to take it up with my wife. I didn't hear any more about it that day, but come evening, there was a small but welcome hot meal waiting for all of us. The Mora family offered what part of the patio wasn't already their home as a temporary kitchen, and Mrs. Mora turns out to be a wonder at feeding a crowd. We eat by portable task lights with heating from a portable radiant heater. The scouts return just as the food hits the tables. They make their report while wolfing down spicy beans and rice and fresh house-made tortillas. It looks like the entire city is without power. Plenty of invisible damage, countless downed trees, nearly every road is blocked. High-tension power lines strewn like the broken rigging of a wrecked sailing ship. For all our losses, we turn out to have been fortunate yet again. Having our own power makes a big difference to the repairs and cleanup and the overall morale. We didn't finish the repairs, of course. Best estimate, 2 more days before the weather can be kept out. But while the wind blew all day, it didn't rain again, and that's a mercy. With the roads blocked and the power out all over the city, we don't have to worry about raiders for a while. But I wonder if they'll just be more desperate than before once they do show up. Turns out, we had bigger problems coming our way. After dinner, I sleep like the dead. Day 22. Scout Mindset. The storm has passed. It rained a little more overnight, but it wasn't much. Clear skies greet us. I checked, and the batteries were run low overnight, nearly to cutting out. If we get a sunny day, that situation at least will be fixed for us. The new dawn starts another day of cleaning up around the neighborhood and home repairs. Downed limbs make their way onto the barricade at each end of the street. The surrounding silence is unnerving. Zombie movie stuff. There are some distant chainsaws at work, but not nearly what I would have expected, given the scope of the damage. It's the worst feeling I've had since the start of this shit show. Electrical power to the city is still out. A good guess is that the same applies to many other cities in the region. Can we expect FEMA to show up? How does any of this get fixed without a massive fuel supply? It's gotten bad. I guess it can still get worse, though. Note to self, we're on our own. Time to innovate. I have an idea about how to distribute what power I have. I rig up a power node, a wooden box with plenty of electrical outlets. From a 50-foot long coil of 10-3 Romex wire I have on the shelf and some scrap plywood. Yeah, I'm that guy. We already salvaged a ton of outlets from the burnt-out houses. The business end of the Romex gets fixed into a 70-amp double-throw breaker in the solar closet, and the power head runs out as far as it can reach. We pull all the extension cords we can find and run them out to as many homes as these can reach. It's not much, and it's dangerous as hell, but it's perfect. This amounts to maybe 10 amps per home within reach, and only for a few hours each day, or they'll kill the batteries. But it's better than being in the dark, and anyone with a hot plate can heat some food. Home repairs are turning out to be a challenge. We created a third team to ferry salvaged materials from storage and around the neighborhood and to the repair sites. Looks like we won't have enough plywood to rebuild the missing roof, nor shingles. We need to find a solution to keep the rain out. The house that took the tree strike is almost fixed. At least it should keep out the weather. It won't have windows or siding on that side, but we can sort that out later. The wives and smaller children are cleaning up the fallen limbs and leaves around the block and tossing everything on the brush pile at the intersection. The small children turn it into a game, of course, but at least they're having a good time. It's good to hear them laughing and playing. We got news from a passing police officer that there will be another food distribution. He gave us what appeared to be an invitation to send 4 people. I like the sound of this much better, and we agreed to send a team of scouts with a wheelbarrow. The sunny day is good for the solar storage, but I caution the neighbors about leaning too hard on the power at night, as there isn't much to go around. We have another potluck meal. The temporary patio kitchen is looking more like a restaurant at this point. Mr. and Mrs. Mora seem to be doing most of the cooking. I think it takes them all day. The food is fantastic, and they seem perfectly pleased with their new role. After everyone is fed, I get the attention of the scouts and mention we should have a little talk. I notice there are 6 of them, making 2 more in the ranks. I'm told the 2 new members are friends of the original 4, a brother and sister from a few miles away. That's fine. They are welcome as far as I care, but there needs to be an agreement about that. About many things, actually. After the meal, I'm too tired to talk, but there's no way around it. I hadn't intended for it to be a long lecture, but once I got started, I realized how big the task was. To their credit, they listened carefully, asking a few questions. I started out by reminding them they are scouts, and that makes them the extended exterior, the skin of the community. They will meet friends and potential foes before any of the rest of us. As scouts, they will locate potential resources and coordinate with other groups. This offers a lot of responsibility, but I'm sure they can handle it. I explain what is called the scout mindset. Scouts are curious and pursue and embrace objective reality. They have an open mind and know to expect the unexpected. Scouts are not soldiers. They are loyal, but not rigidly so. The scout mindset never sleeps. In the field, the scout will approach the unknown carefully, but with curiosity. Try not to judge, and likewise be prepared to alter your position quickly. A scout moving through the landscape is like a hunting animal. Seek nothing, see everything. This is true sight. Remember that unimportant things might become critical resources later. Always know what your escape route is. Retreat silently before you run. Run before you fight. Surrender before you die, because there is no glory in death. Survival is the only law. Think and act like a cat. They are the ultimate survivors. Cats will sit for a long time, silently observing before they move. When a cat moves, she constantly scans the surroundings with her eyes and her ears. She often pauses and listens. When something potentially dangerous passes, she waits silently. Patience is, for a cat or a scout, the ultimate skill. Diplomacy is an important skill as well. Chance meetings in the wilderness are sometimes opportunities to learn about others. Some will be friendly, some will be aggressive. Most won't be anything. You will pass them like ships passing in the night. This latter is preferred. Some very few you meet will also be scouts, the same as you. Be meticulous around foreign scouts, the same as a tiger is meticulous around other tigers. Those were my thoughts on the topics, should anyone wish to know what I told them. Gleaned from a long life of being myself a scout. On the topic of bringing more people into the community, I told them it was a decision for the leadership, not me, and not the scouts. They understood and apologized and asked what they should do. I told them to talk to the elders, and maybe something could be, I think that's a mistake. In this part of the story, there are no elders, so I'm going to have to edit that. Put that somewhere else. Great. Now I'm a mentor. I'll add that to all the other ton of stuff I'm carrying. Day 23. Crack up, boom. More cleaning up. There was a problem today with a certain Todd Polson. I've been watching him for a while, as he doesn't help much, but keeps to his house with his wife. They seem to be managing well enough up to now. For some reason, he picked a fight with some of our gardeners working near his home, as they were leveling ground and planting seeds. I wasn't there, so I don't know the details. I hear it was some ugly verbal abuse. The cracks are forming. According to this journal, it's been 23 days since the onset of the collapse of industrialized civilization. Seems too soon for a breakup of this kind, but the stress has been intense. We're mostly adults, and we're working together to provide mutual support. We should be able to avoid a Lord of the Flies situation, but there are bound to be weaker elements, people that refuse to adapt to changing times. I hope someone can talk him down. That was day 23. We skipped to day 36. Betrayal. I'm back. I've been on my own outside the community compound that I helped build for 11 days, notching a stick each morning to keep track. I didn't have anything to write on during the time, nor was I interested. I'm not going to say much about what happened, but as it is important to record the evolution of this project, I will make some comments for anyone who wonders what happened to us in the end. After my last entry, meaning the next day, Polson shot and killed a member of our community. Before the end of the day, I had administered some rough justice. No burial. We don't have time nor room for that. His wife didn't like it, but who cares? I disposed of Polson a fair distance outside the main gate, where the dog packs could enjoy him. Upon my return, I was confronted by at least half the community barring the gate against me. Apparently, I was being voted off the island. It was an easy decision. I left on the spot, determined then and there to be quit of the lot before they started in eating each other. When I had earlier boarded up the front of the house, I had left it in a state where I could get back in from the outside with only a few tools, and these I left nearby. 10 minutes of work, and I was in the house and talking to my wife. I will not expose the discussion. It adds little to the narrative concerning the development of this project. I spent one more comfortable night at home, also enjoying a great meal cooked by the Mora family. I could have left it at that, simply hiding out, but I was keenly interested in finding a new home for us. The wife didn't like it, but I felt like I had little choice. Besides, I argued, there was no harm in having a look around. Nor will I detail how I spent my 11-day wandering in the wilderness, as I call it. Briefly, I was fine. I ate well enough, and I learned something about how the world was holding itself together, meaning not too well. The best part of my wanderings was that I acquired a dog. Perchance he acquired me. He's sleeping at my feet right now. I call him Bear, because he is a large dog. I don't recognize the breed. He has a rough coat and drooping ears and a dark muzzle. Mastiff? Newfoundland? Intelligent animal, from what I can tell. Sometime later, I was returning home, having made suitable arrangements in another community not far off, and I came upon the scouts. My initial thought was to leave them to their work, whatever it was. It was no business of mine, obviously. Besides, I was taking some of my advice on what to do when running across other scouts. There was no compelling reason to break protocols. All that being true, I changed my mind. Wishing to create a teaching moment, I stepped into the road behind them and cleared my throat. After an initial fright, they were happy to see me and eager to talk. What I learned was that they had been out looking for me for 3 days. I asked why, and they shared that things had changed. I offered that no, things had not changed, not for me, but they insisted I come back with them. As I was already headed that way, I pretended to agree. I did not tell them I was coming back to fetch my wife away to a new community, as that was my business and none of theirs. They were slightly alarmed when I called Bear out of cover. The team had been avoiding dogs and dog packs long enough to be wary of a large dog, but when he seemed friendly, they relaxed. Since I am writing in this journal again, the reader can well guess the outcome of my return. I didn't know at the time, because I don't play politics very well, that some neighbors, including Todd Polson, had been complaining about my outsized importance in the community. The complaint they had was that I was behaving like a dictator. After I had taken care of Todd Polson's problem, his surviving compatriots had quickly sprung a conspiracy to take me down. I don't know who supported this effort. My assumption at the time had been that it was all of them, and I was better off plying my trade elsewhere. According to the scouts, this was not at all the case. They told me that nearly everyone was just confused by events and were collecting at the gate to see what I would do. Typical bystander effect. If I hadn't been so tired and annoyed at the time, I might have handled it differently, or someone could have backed me up. Note to self: people are weird, especially during times of stress. After I'd left the community, the conspirators had imposed an actual dictatorship, as anyone with any understanding of human nature could have anticipated. The rebels immediately demanded control of the food supply, had all the guns delivered into their care to avoid future problems, and then started throwing their weight around. After a week of dealing with actual dictators, the community decided this was not the direction they wanted to go. They jumped the rebel faction, disarmed them, took all the food back, and shut them up in their homes, under guard. The scouts were then sent out to find me. While the young people filled me in on all this, I kept my larger plans to myself. When I got back, I checked in on my wife. She was most pleased, and we sat down to a meal and a long talk. I told her how I had made a really solid contact with another larger group a few miles away. They were impressed by my skill set and her experience as an urban gardener and offered us shelter in exchange for our contribution to their effort. They seemed like a smart bunch to me. They understood the challenges ahead and they really needed more people like myself. I thought she would be happy. She was not. Turns out she had been arguing with the neighbors since I had left, and it hadn't taken her long to convince them they had screwed up. The rebel faction tried to shut her down the same way they had me, but she hadn't sat still for it. By the time they thought to toss her out, she already had a group of allies. A bit of patience, and then the opportunity came to topple the rebel faction, bloodlessly managed in no small part by my cadre of scouts. All's well that ends well, they tell us. All the same, my thinking was that these were unreliable people, and I wanted to work with a group that weren't as gullible. I allowed her to prevail over my plans to move on, provided that I wasn't thrown out again for any reason of any kind. She agreed. No second chance. The Moras were glad I was back. I thanked them again for watching after my wife. Still no word from the son-in-law. That's worrisome. Bear raised some eyebrows, but there was no chance of my sending him away. I explained that he was a good dog, devoted to myself, hint, hint, and I would take him out hunting every few days so he wouldn't be eating any of the people food, or the actual people either, though I thought it better to leave that part out. I don't think they found that much reassurance, but given how they had recently treated me, I could not have cared less what they found reassuring. If that makes me a bad man, then so be it. I also explained that I would be spending less time inside the village and more time outside it. That's a lot of discussion for a single day, but I want it recorded for posterity. People make bad choices. This is the story of our entire existence on Earth. People also rise above those errors and proceed from a better vantage. We shall see. Day 37, Leadership. I kept to myself today, lying low and trying to convince the wife to dump this bunch. It's no good. She's being as stubborn as an ox. I get it. It won't become a problem with us. I was approached in the afternoon by a small group and asked what I thought should be done with the rebel faction, still holed up in their homes. I said I had no opinion at all, but that any justice should be as fair as possible. I wasn't likely to say toss them out. When my non-answer didn't satisfy them, as well it might not, I suggested they elect themselves some leadership, perhaps a group of 3 elders, and let the elders decide. This was deemed a good start. They asked me if I would like to become one of the 3, and I said I would not. I didn't tell them I had 1 foot out the door as it was. I took the scouts on an expedition. During the 11 days, I had been wandering about and exploring. I ran across an empty home with perfectly good grid-tied solar and wall battery, the latter used to charge an EV. The interior of the home had been trashed, the same as all the others around, but the vandals had been too limited in their vision to recognize that the most valuable part was actually on the roof. I can teach the scouts how to recognize such installations, and we can use this first one to demonstrate how to perform a salvage. I think I will leave it there. My wife just came home. She's going to come in the house. And I'll do some more editing. I found that error. I'll have to fix that for continuity purposes. And then in a couple of days, we'll do another stream. Remember to like and subscribe. And if you're finding these stories interesting, maybe forward them to somebody who is wondering what they're supposed to do. The story becomes much more about coping, becoming resilient, building community, and dealing with the collapse of civilization in a sane and methodical way. Because I like to think of myself as a sane and methodical person, but your mileage may vary.